Well, welcome to another moment with us on people getting in good trouble, the good troublemakers. And I'm so happy. I'm your host, Paki, and I am so happy today to have as my guest Dr. Ann Ferguson, who is a philosopher. And I thought of her and thought, oh, you know, we look at all these different people who get into good trouble, and I think, oh, I know someone who's gotten into good trouble, and it's not the usual way you think of John Lewis or Martin Luther King getting in trouble, but there's so many wonderful ways to get into good trouble that I thought Ann Ferguson would be a great person to share that with us. So Ann, tell us about how you you decided to study philosophy, become a philosopher, and become a feminist philosopher.
Well, first of all, Paki, thank you very much for inviting me. You're my favorite Happy Valley activist, and I'm just honored to be here. So I became a philosopher because when I went to college, I'm a middle-class white woman. I graduated in 1959 from college. I was supposed to get married by the time I got out of college, and my present boyfriend wasn't somebody I wanted to marry. So I thought, well, what can I do? I've got to get a job, I guess, until I find a husband, because that's what women are supposed to do. So then I went to graduate school because I had majored in philosophy, and I thought, oh, I like ideas. I'll just go there. Maybe I'll end up teaching, and maybe I'll find a husband in graduate school. So, and then when I was in graduate school, I got really interested in social and political philosophy and ethics. I started getting involved in the civil rights movement. They were doing fair housing calling and so on. And I thought, oh, wow. It's funny, though, that philosophy, that we're studying really doesn't have anything to say about social movements, or we certainly hadn't read very much about social justice. I was in a very academic graduate department. And so I thought, well, I guess this is politics and philosophy is something different. And then there were several people in my graduate class who were women, but I don't think there was only one of them that actually got a job in philosophy. The rest got married and ended up dropping out and having kids. And when I got to my philosophy first job, I was the only woman, and that's about true. I mean, in philosophy, there's about maybe 1 in 10 philosophers are women. So then, I was really involved in movements of the 60s, and got kind of radicalized by the peace movement, Vietnam War movement, started studying about imperialism. I had already thought, boy, there's systematic racism in this country. I mean, it's supposed to be a land of equality. What's going on? And then, we're imperialists too. And so I was involved in all these movements. And then the women's movement came along. And in the women's movement, we were like, many of us had been civil rights activists, and we were supporting black liberation. And then, well, gee, women are kind of dominated too, or dominated, in the civil rights movement. Many of us, certainly for white women, we're supposed to be making the coffee and running off the mimeograph machine. Something's wrong with this picture. And so we started thinking about also more broadly, well, why are there so few women in philosophy, and what's wrong with our way of thinking about ideas and philosophy that has kind of kept more women from being involved in this, and why doesn't it relate to the real world? So anyway, I became a feminist, and I joined the women's liberation movement, and but I was also really understanding the problems of capitalism and thinking this is really an unfair system we live in. I mean, the racism is partly connected to the capitalism, but women are oppressed. I mean, women's unpaid work is not considered valuable because the only thing valuable in capitalism is money and profit, and women caring for children and elders aren't making any money, so that must not be very valuable. So there's something wrong with how we think about work and how we think about what's valuable in the world, and somehow this isn't being studied in our philosophy classes. So some of us, and by the way, I want to emphasize this shirt I'm wearing. This is a shirt from my former graduate student who now teaches philosophy at the SUNY University in Cortland. She has a program called Sophia's Garden, and Sophia in Greek means wisdom. And so this is how feminists redefined, the iconic, four of the iconic philosophers. We all know that in Western philosophy it's Plato and Aristotle and Kant and so on, that there are Hume and those people who are the philosophers that we know about. But in this shirt, this is her group of philosophy students who teach philosophy and talk about philosophical questions to elementary school kids. The iconic philosophers are Plato, Linda Martín Alcoff, who's a Latina philosopher who does studies of racism, sexism, and class. Angela Davis, who's a black feminist thinker, who's a Marxist philosopher. And W.E. Du Bois, who's a famous black philosopher, sociologist. So we've redefined the icon of who's the famous philosopher. So we're expanding what is considered philosophy and trying to answer questions like, the basic philosophical questions. I still take a lot from what I learned as a mainstream philosopher. You can get from Kant, which is, what is a philosopher really doing? Well, philosophers are doing questions like, what is real? Metaphysical questions. Are some aspects of life more basic or essential than others? What are the essential aspects of things? Is it material things? Is it spiritual things? How do we connect mind and body? That's sort of metaphysical questions. What can be known? How do we know it? Knowledge questions. What ought I to do? So as a moral person, how should I live my life? What are my duties? How can I promote goodness to humanity? How can I balance that against goodness, things to my family and friends? And finally, what may I hope? So what is real? What can be known? What ought I to do? And what may I hope? Well, feminists came with...
Let me stop you for a minute, because that's part of that's the canon.
That's the canon.
Yes.
That's the canon.
So then I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Interrupt me whenever, because I could just go on a lecture for a long time.
And then the feminists came. And
then the feminists came and said, all right, what have you been teaching in Western philosophy about, what is essential in life? Well, they've been teaching historically the organic worldview that basically, for example, if you think about the role of men and women, that we're like organs in a big body, and we each have our function to play. Like organs in a body are important to do their job, to make the body function and live well, and so on. The heart, the liver, the lungs, etc. So what are women supposed to do? Well, women are supposed to reproduce babies and care for them and be wives and mothers. Well, what are men supposed to do? Well, men are supposed to be the warriors and they're supposed to be the thinkers. So there's a big division between head and heart. And this is supposed to be part of the natural order of things.
Yes,
so,
the separation of head and heart.
Yes, head and heart, right. And so if you're a feminist philosopher, you're already violating the idea that, women are supposed to be home doing the caring heart work, and you're thinking, and you're developing questions about...
not very good.
No, and so, are you masculine? What's happening? Are you losing your feminine aspect? Well, so feminists started challenging this whole idea there's natural essences and that women are just destined to be wives and mothers, and said, well, look, women need to play... Look, if we actually really are doing our jobs and this is an uncaring, unfair world, then we have to be out there fighting for peace, because it's our children and our neighbors' children and so on who are being killed in these wars, and it's our environment that's being despoiled. So we have to be doing things. So we started redefining what the questions were.
Yeah. Do you think, given what you began with, your own evolution,
right.
Being involved as an undergraduate and then as a graduate student in the social movements, in civil rights,
right.
women's movement,
peace movement,
and to realize that that women had something to say.
Yes.
And that so building on these lived experiences, I think often of the traditional logic, the traditional knowledge through the canon, and then there's the lived experience knowledge.
Right.
And you bring them both together and come up with this feminist philosophy now.
Right, exactly. And, a lot of us, I'm sure you were too, Paki, in the 70s, 60s, we were in women's groups basically talking about the personal as the political and lived experience, and why is our experience, as carers and as women who oppose the war and see yet that we're dominated by men, just as white people dominate, black people. Why are our voices not heard, and why are we made to feel that if we raise those questions, we're not doing our job as women? And so we started, from our personal experience, saying, well, maybe there's a feminist way of knowing, the social order that this masculine-defined philosophy isn't achieving. Uh-huh. So then this is the whole knowledge question, How do we know what's real and, in terms of even the social order and what we as social animals, how we ought to be living and what's wrong with our world? And maybe it's not just through abstract, rational thinking. We have to use learned experience. We have to go out in the world to see how the world is divided in terms of the work we do. Yeah. And maybe the work that women do as carers and as mothers and as community organizers gives us a way of understanding what's wrong, and our voice is really needed to try to make the social order that would be a more ideal and just society.
Yeah. So as that second wave, I think of that the second wave of
right.
feminism. That what I'm hearing you say is, what were our lived experiences, and the lived experience was standing up for justice, was standing up for peace, was standing
Absolutely.
up for freedom.
Yeah.
And you say, and that's when we were women doing those things. So yes, so it wasn't just to nurture my baby, but to nurture the world, to really be empathic, which is now a word that I understand is being scrutinized. It's not a good word, but on the contrary, I think it's a very good word, and it's one of the words that I think feminism brought into the mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about how the mainstream used to think about, what's good for a society, it was just, especially in a capitalist society, it's, let's see, what promotes the GDP, and we can expand the goods, and everybody has more goods, and everybody has, the possibility of housing and getting ahead and so on. That forgets about, the fact that we are social animals. We need love, empathic relations to each other. We need to be in a community that we care about. We're social animals. And the social means that we should be promoting a society that has love and care relations taught both to boys and to girls, not just warrior values or not just abstract thinking, how can we promote the greatest profit, or how can I maximize, my interest as a rational economic man. That's how the economists think about this whole thing. But, how can I promote good and loving and caring relations between my children, the community, when I see people killed in Gaza or in Vietnam in our day doing against the Vietnam War, what's my role? How can I, deal with being compassionate and make a difference to those children in those areas who didn't deserve to die, So yeah, we're trying to bring this other understanding of what the value ought to be of promoting a better society. We're bringing a feminist moral imagination and a feminist vision, that involves caring and loving and connection.
Yes, and those were the days when feminism wasn't the dirty word it is today.
No,
or the
and
bad
what does
word.
feminist mean to you, Paki?
Yes.
What does it mean?
Well, I think it means that the women's voices. There is an alternative voice to the dominant story, and that one of those alternatives is feminism, is looking at what women have to contribute, what we have contributed, and I think when I was listening to you and reflecting on my own life, as a young woman, I was involved in these movements, and they were terribly empowering, incredibly empowering. So that we felt. I mean, when I think about at 25 organizing a community, I think, wow, who did we think we were?
Registering people to vote.
Yes, registering to vote. Standing up for civil rights. And I think taking the time, and we actually had the time to reflect on that and to say, well, wait a minute, look what we did. And what do you mean man means everybody?
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people think, oh, feminist, that just means you hate men or, somehow you're out for yourself. But really, feminism to me means fighting sexist oppression. It doesn't just mean inserting women, into equality with men. It means, fighting sexist oppression, and that, according to if we think about what the Black feminists have offered us, means if we're really thinking about sexism, it connects to racism, and if we're really thinking about empowering all women, then we have to be fighting racism. In fact, we can't be free until everybody's free. So it's really a kind of social justice idea that we're all valuable, men, women, Black, white, whatever our religion is, and we should be equally treated in the society. We should have autonomy. In my opinion, we are all really born androgynous. As Simone de Beauvoir said, one is not born a woman. You have to learn how to be one, and you learn how to be a man. And unfortunately, a lot of men have learned toxic masculinity, and that's how they hold up their, face in relation to other men. And I think relations between men and between women are really important to understand how male domination continues too. I mean, thinking about how we organize work and how we have men basically the majority of the military, men the majority of the government. They're bonding with each other, and they have to show that they're masculine, and that means sometimes denying what they could understand as their compassionate, side of themselves. Yeah. And if we reorganized how we organize childcare and care for elders, so that men too learned how to do these caring skills and develop that side of themselves.
Now, as a philosopher, Dr. Ferguson, I'm curious about, you were talking about all these very practical things rather than just the academy. How were these ideas appreciated in the academy?
Well, they weren't appreciated by my colleagues. I mean, actually, they tried to fire me, and they said I wasn't doing philosophy, because even though I was as a feminist asking what is real and challenging their understanding of what was real and what can be known, and giving an alternative idea of different ways of knowing, and what I ought to do, and talking about social and political philosophy and comparing their social and political philosophers to feminist philosophers on the answer to that question and what we could hope for. So those are the four classic Kantian questions. We were just doing them with feminist questions and answers. They thought, well, that's not really philosophy. And part of this was because we were also involved in women's studies. I mean, we realized, well, you can't just learn about ideas in the abstract. You have to learn about them from experience. You have to understand how other people live. If you're, really promoting the cause of women, then you can't just understand American white women, you have to understand American women of color, you have to understand, Israeli, Palestinian women. You have to understand how women are living in the world, and then you have to understand how they connect to the men and children and their families. So you need to know some sociology, anthropology, and so on, and in order to do your job as a philosopher. And of course, that's heresy. You're going to mix up these other disciplines with the discipline you were taught. Well, that just shows you don't know what you're thinking because you haven't been trained in that stuff. So we started learning all that stuff.
Yes, well, I think it's so interesting, to go back to the head and heart. This was philosophy is a head trip.
Very heady, yes.
and what feminism did was crack that egg.
Right.
And it's it hasn't gone back, I don't believe, since.
No, I mean, in fact, I remember the first book I published. I did a lot of confessing in the intro chapter about who I was, how I developed my ideas. How my certain feelings connected to my work, and that was considered not what you did in an introduction to philosophy, because you're bringing your personal experience into talking about your ideas, and that's not okay.
Because you had been to those consciousness-raising groups.
I've been to those
where we talk about personalism, political.
I know, but we took seriously the personal as the political, and it's also part of the philosophical. And that's again this idea: how do we know the world? We know it from our own personal standpoint. Yes, of course, we verify that from others, so we consider experts, and so we, knowledge is something that you learn collectively about the world. But who do you learn it from? If you just learn it from male experts and they have a certain way that they're seeing the world because, they work in certain professions, they don't get the experiences that those that in the sexual division of labor work in others, they haven't really experienced the whole other part. So, they're missing something. And so if you think of knowledge as perspectival, based on your own experience and the testimonies and knowledges that you've gained from that, then, you can think of knowledge as based on those in the margin. This is Bell Hook's idea. Really supplementing those in the center, which have dominated what we think we know, which is the white male, rational,
going back to that
scientist.
That man on your chest right now.
Yeah, that guy. Right.
Yeah.
So,
it is. It has been quite a shift, and I think I'm curious about your experience in the academy and how things have changed, and when you became an emerita, when you retired. What have you left behind, and how aware are you of the changes that you and other feminist philosophers made, or are making still?
You mean in the profession or in the world?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know how
take your pick.
Well, in the profession, I think we've made a lot of changes. I mean, we have, a feminist ethics and social theory philosophy group that we have many more graduate students. We have, regular courses now taught in feminist philosophy. When I first came into the department and was teaching social and political theory, at a certain point they said, okay, well, if you want to teach a course, you can teach philosophy of woman. Because, Plato had some things to say about man and woman. So did Rousseau, so did Kant, so did all these sort of sexist philosophers. So you can teach what they said. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to teach what they said, but I introduced Simone de Beauvoir and Mary Wollstonecraft and all the feminist philosophers that were sort of left out, including Emma Goldman and Angela Davis, and I started putting in all these people they didn't think were in the canon. And I thought, well, this isn't really just philosophy of women. This is philosophy of gender, and it's also philosophy of sexuality, because part of this is about what we think sexuality is about, and what we think love is about, and whether those are part of, how we define what men and women are, just sort of naturally attracted to each other, what happens to lesbians and gay people and non-gendered or queer people, they're not even in here. So I want to talk about that whole thing too. I don't want to just talk about philosophy of woman. So then I redefined the course, and then they thought I wasn't teaching philosophy, but I got to teach it because I was tenured by that time over the objections, by the way, of the majority of my department, but overruled, luckily, by the provost at that time, who was concerned with affirmative action promotions. And so, with a little help from outside colleagues who thought I was doing a good job, I managed to get tenure. But there are a lot now of relatively well-known feminist philosophers who are teaching courses and having graduate students and connecting to women's studies programs, which we also didn't have when I first came, of course. There weren't any women's studies programs.
Yeah, I'm curious because when you start talking about these origins back when we came out of the Black liberation and gay liberation, there was what I used to refer to as the oppression Olympics.
Yeah, right.
Who's more oppressed? Oh, black people are. No, women are. And on. And what I experience is we have actually moved from that to realizing, as you said earlier, anyone who's oppressed, we're all oppressed. As long as anyone is not free, none of us are free.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know how we made that shift, or if this is just in my small circle of friends, but I'm curious about your thinking on that.
Yeah, no, I think certainly in Western, or sort of American philosophy and European philosophy, there was this division between types of theory of male domination. There was and how to overcome it. There was the liberal feminists, okay, really capitalist society is unequal, but it's just because of our bad historical, cultural things that are remnants of feudalism. If we just sort of educate people and pass some more laws, we can get women equal to men. And then there was, people thought, well, wait a minute, male domination is deeper than that. It goes back through, feudalism and not just capitalism. So the radical feminists said, well, no, this means that there's a separate system of patriarchy where men are dominating women, partly by their physical power, but also partly by heterosexual control and the way women are forced to take care of children and, not be the warriors. So we have to separate. We have to figure out a way to build a woman's culture that can challenge this. So that's radical feminist, sort of very general gloss. But then the socialist feminists like me, that's my position, basically started saying, well, wait, that doesn't explain sexism. It doesn't explain class inequality to just say it's men who are dominating women. What about white people dominating black people? What about, imperialist first world countries dominating third, which connects to class, capitalist development. So we got to include all those aspects, those different oppressive systems. And I think out of that, and black feminists were really leading the charge on this. People like Angela Davis, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde. So intersectional, and what you're talking about, the sort of, we can't have the, oppression Olympics, which is more oppressed. This is a losing strategy. We can't just have identity politics. We have to have a way that we make a coalition to say, look, this is not social justice for any of us. And all of us have the possibility of being, more androgynous, more caring, and also standing up for ourselves, and what we care for. And so we need to make coalitions to fight all these kinds of oppression. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing. For example, now I'm working with the Franklin County Continuing the Political Revolution, which is a leftist group that formed when Bernie Sanders was running for president the first time. But it's organized by task force of various things we think need to be challenged in the capitalist system we live in. And we organize a reproductive justice task force. So we're now working to try to restore abortion rights and contraception rights, but also we've redefined this with the help of black feminists like Loretta Ross to include not just abortion rights and contraception rights, but lesbian, gay rights, rights not to be, reproductive is part of reproductive rights, and the rights to care for your children and family in a way as mothers and as partners of men that allows those families to flourish. And that means no racism, no ethnicism, no deporting of immigrants who've lived for years in the community and contributed to it. So that's the way that reproductive justice suddenly becomes something about communities being able to reproduce themselves and thrive, and families getting to make their own decisions and care for the children they have and make decisions about their lives. So it broadens the whole concept, makes it an intersectional coalition. We have to fight all the oppressions kind of concept.
So the feminist philosophers have contributed to our learning and becoming intersectionalist.
I hope so. I mean, and we certainly learned from the black feminist philosophers.
Yeah.
So, there's been, a lot of, most of the feminists I know who are feminist philosophers have also been activists, and they've been involved in coalitionist movements about civil rights and anti-imperialism and, anti-war, climate crisis and climate justice issues. So, I think we have.
So let me just ask you something to go a little far afield. I know you're retired now.
Yeah.
But you're probably still aware of what's happening in the academy.
Yeah.
What are your concerns? And how can we, who are not involved in the actual institutions, promote the kind of education that led to people really become intersectionalist?
Yeah, I think it's really scary right now, actually, because we see in this very authoritarian administration that we have under Trump that they're attacking the university as a space for free speech. If you're opposed to genocide in Gaza, then you're somehow anti-Semitic, and we're taking away your research money. So basically, you're denying the university, and the academy, who have decided what their knowledge fields are, and they're doing research in health, education, welfare that really benefits everybody to do their work. And you're basically saying, no, you can't do this kind of work, and we're taking away your money. And research and knowledge building, it does involve money. So they're closing that gap. And to say you can't teach diversity, inclusion, equity courses, strikes at the heart of women's studies, Afro-Am studies, Latino studies. These are all studies, or Latin American studies, which really basically are interdisciplinary, and they try to show how these social oppressions develop in many different ways, sort of materially, economically, socially, culturally, in terms of religion understandings, and get people to be thinking about them interdisciplinarily. And so if you say, well, that's all, biased, and we're taking that all out, you can't do that, you cut off all the possibility for critical thinking that will allow people to really do that coalitional understanding about social oppressions that we were able to develop in the universities in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Because they had their own biases. They weren't dealing with what we thought should be in the curriculum, so we expanded the curriculum like feminist philosophers did. And so did the civil rights people by creating Afro-American studies and so on. But now they're denying those departments and programs the right to exist. They're trying to take them out of the curriculum.
I mean, it's so interesting. When I look back over the past 50 years of education, what the changes that have taken place, and how quickly they're being curtailed, shut out entirely.
Yeah.
And you look at what's the the advance of liberal education over the past 50 years has just been remarkable. I mean, when you were just chronicling, what has actually come to be in this very short span of time. There were no women's studies programs.
No, they didn't exist.
No.
There were no black studies or Afro studies or Latino studies, the things didn't exist.
And I think
certainly like environmental studies, climate crisis studies, that didn't exist.
Yeah. For our viewers who are younger and think, well, this has always been. No, it hasn't, and now it's very precariously, again, challenged.
Yeah, I know it's very scary, and I mean, we're going to have to go back to trying to find ways to defend and expand that curriculum, and this is going to take rebuilding the social movements that have been maybe diminished for the younger generation, bringing them back again to have that younger generation hopefully connect to some of us olders who've lived through this wave and now are dealing with this repression. Sort of say, look, you need to carry the ball forward because we need to get back to the diversity and inclusion that they're trying to cut out of our curriculum. You really need to understand the Civil War. You really need to understand that slaves didn't have a happy life, that it wasn't just, somehow they were getting work training to, advance up the ladder. I mean, which is what some of the right people are saying. Actually, the right-wing people are teaching things like, well, slavery was actually a good thing because it took them out of those hellholes like Africa and put them into the U.S. so they could, then become slaves and learn a trade, and then they could work their way up after the slavery ended. So it was actually a good development. I mean, that's ludicrous.
It's totally ludicrous. Yes.
I mean, but they're teaching it. I mean, that's what they think we should be teaching. So. We have to fight that narrative, and the only way to do that, and sometimes, back in the day, we had open universities. We felt that the main, we would basically take over the campus and some anti-war rallies and so on, and have an open university where we would have our own workshops and be reading our own, leading our own critical theory, and this was students doing this with some radical faculty, but people were doing their own study reading groups, and hopefully the younger generation is going to find a way to do this, and I'm hoping that we can connect to them and try to have this go forward, because we're going to need strong movements of resistance, strong social movements to deal with this authoritarian cutting off of the university space for free speech.
And this is a concern. And it's really a question for you and for our audience. You and I have lived through the 60s. We lived through terrible assassinations: John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and on and on.
Yeah.
And we kept our optimism. We didn't give up. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid, or I'm concerned, that people are giving up. And I want to know how you think we might continue to feed the courage and determination to not give up.
Yeah, I know. I think also we're also in silos, so that people are really, listening to the news that they connect to on a lot of them on social media, younger generation, and so they're not hearing the other side. They're not getting to think critically about what their silo is teaching them, or compassionately about what the other side might be thinking, and then ways to dialogue. And I think the way, one way around that has to be finding ways to resist, to bring in young people. And one thing I think is really important, that was true for the women's movement, certainly the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, is getting people singing together. Getting people singing civil rights songs, union songs, trade unions has been a historically really important way to get workers to feel solidarity with each other. Solidarity is really important, and that's not just something that's a feeling. You learn that by being with people, by feeling you have a connection to them. How do you feel it? We feel it by singing together, by marching together, by putting your money where your mouth is in terms of standing together against some kind of oppression to promote what you think is fair or just. And so we have to have more of these demonstrations like we're having the No Kings rallies that we have. One's coming up on October 18th here in the Valley that draw young people in. And I think music and getting people to sing along, not just performances where you listen to people, but you actually get involved. You hear other people next to you singing. You feel that we're social animals. Singing brings you together in a community. It makes you feel like, I'm connected to you. You're next to me. I'm singing. This feels good. We're doing something together. Yes. It's enjoyable. The words mean something. They give you a vision of where you can go. You feel stronger. You're not alone, and you go home and you think, wow, we are powerful. We can do things.
Yes.
And it feels good. It's not just, oh no, it's so horrible. I can't do anything. I'm powerless, which is, I think, a way a lot of people feel in this country.
Yeah. And I appreciate your highlighting this, because I totally, maybe because I agree with you, but I think, yes, and we've been doing singing here in the Valley, and it has been really energizing, and we will continue. I expect at this next No King's Day, and on.
Well, in that evening of the King's Day, which is October 18th, Anne Louise White and friends are doing a sing-along at the Mount Toby Quaker Meeting House, and there will be a bunch of sing-alongs from these different movements and some that are about our present movement. So I hope people will come. There's a lot of now singing being generated. And so if we can just get some young people to come and be a part of this and just spread the word to your friends and have them bring their kids.
Yeah, and because I think that is part of the cynicism of the day, that it doesn't matter what I do. And I think, we didn't end the Vietnam War. We joined with the Vietnamese in supporting them in ending the war. But I think we were a factor. And and the same thing I think is happening around Israel and the genocide. That it's very slow. It's too slow. As we see what's happening.
It's heart-rending. It's just horrible to see the murders of babies there and how it keeps going on. And we are trying, and they are trying, and, we just have to keep fighting against this horrible human disaster that we're part of the cause of. Our government.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's always the important thing to remember, that we're not the ones who are guilty, except it is our government, and to what extent are we supporting it, and to what extent are we standing up against it. And I keep hearing this, courage is contagious, and you don't need a vaccine to have courage.
Yeah, for example, I take heart by the fact that there was a one-day strike at Mount Holyoke College by the custodians, the cleaners, the cooks, mostly women doing women's work, which was underpaid. They were asking for a living wage of a very rich college, that has, a $1.2 billion, endowment, to just basically give them a livable wage for the lowest paid, women's work, mostly, cleaning, caring for people. And they were resisting. Management was resisting. They had this one-day strike. They had lots of singing. They got a lot of students out. They got a lot of faculty and a lot of the staff. Several unions, SEIU, UAW were there. And within one day, because of that resistance that had a lot of young people and older people, management sat down, worked with them, and they won their strike.
Yes.
So, I mean, we gotta go. We have power if we organize.
We do, and I think I really want our watchers, our viewers, to pay attention to that. I was astounded at how fast it happened.
It's
and
amazing.
I was just so impressed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we do have more power than we know.
Yeah.
And we just have to exercise it.
Right. And we do have to find, as elders, ways to connect to younger people. And, you know, it is hard. We are in this very consumerist society where people think, you know, I can't do anything. Well, let me go out and buy something. Or let me watch TV. Or let me just have a nice meal out at a restaurant. You know, I mean, that is if those who can afford it. You know, and because I can't do anything about what's happening. That is a recipe for all of us being more miserable in the future. I mean, this is going to come to get all of us, especially the climate. But as they start taking away they are already taking away our neighbors who are immigrants, but they're going to start taking away American citizens soon, and they're going to, you know, the very real possibility of martial law, so that all of us would lose the right to due process and our constitutional rights if we don't stop them. So we just have to keep spreading this word. And
so how is the First Amendment related to feminist philosophy, she asks?
Well, I mean, you know, back to what we said at the beginning, the right to speak out, the right to make your opinions known, and to have a voice. And, you know, women have been, you know, historically in patriarchal societies, not expected to have a voice. You know, men are supposed to be our voices. We're just supposed to be doing the care work. You know, so feminist philosophy, from the liberal feminists, the radical feminists, the socialist feminists, the intersection, all of us are making clear that we can't do that any longer. We have to be speaking out, because we're speaking not just for ourselves as women, but we're speaking for children, men, you know, the future of humanity, the climate crisis, and these wars, which are part of the climate crisis, but they destroy human possibilities. And so we have to be speaking out, and that's all part of First Amendment rights. So it's absolutely key. If we don't have them, they'll shut down all our movements, you know, and it'll be worse for all of us.
Yeah, and I think I'd just like to build on that for a moment, to remind people that whether it's your town or city, that's where it starts. Going to the select board or going to your city council meetings, going to voting, certainly. And all the way up through what's happening with our state reps and senators, to the Congress of the United States and our senators, and to the president, that we have those voices. And I really want to just underscore, because I think you're absolutely right. We have a voice, and we have to use that voice, because if we don't, we'll lose it. And that's called the First Amendment. And that's the thing.
And we'll lose our democracy.
Yes.
You know, and you'll have a democracy in name only once you have, you know, fascist, you know, troops, the National Guard patrolling the streets, and, you know, basically ICE calling, you know, basically arresting you if you stand on a street corner, you know, demanding justice. You know, they'll for whatever your cause is, that's for social justice, when they're saying that's going to be illegal now. So you've got to do it, you know, or you'll lose it.
Yes. So you got into good trouble at the university and in your field. How are you getting in good trouble these days?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm on this reproductive justice task force. You know, we have coming up, not sure when you're going to be, you know, having this broadcast, but we do have a play about abortion and abortion rights coming up on October 5th at the Shea Theater that our group is supporting, which is a benefit for the Massachusetts Abortion Action Project, trying to get abortion pills to women in abortion-banned states and those who are low income.
Oh, that sounds like good trouble.
Do you think that's pretty good trouble? And, I'm also in the Climate Crisis Task Force, so I really appreciate what you're doing to defend water rights and challenge First Light and the whole way that the Connecticut River has been diverted to kill the fish. And,
yes.
Obviously the Immigration Rights Task Force in the Franklin County community, Continuing with the Political Revolution, is doing a whole lot of work trying to support, challenging ICE when they're picking up people. I mean, did you realize that they started picking up immigrants in the valley in March, and they had 350 people being detained? In June, it was up to 1,500. It was 5 times as much people that they picked up in June. And that they've got 4 times or 5 times as much budget now going to ICE. And these people are, they've lowered their qualifications for who these people need to be. They can be only 18 without a college education. They're bringing in these young people to be ICE agents who, basically are in it for the money. And they aren't training them. They are masked. They are not recognizing due process. So we have to challenge them, and we have to defend the immigrant families who are left behind when these people are kidnapped and disappeared. I mean, if we don't, we're not the America that we hoped we could be.
Well, thank you for bringing philosophy out of the ivory tower. And yes.
Yeah, I didn't ever leave it in there very long.
No, I think it's very important to let people know that there are good uses for education, and the horror of these people who are being hired with no qualifications, in fact, minus qualifications. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be done. And
I really want to thank you, Paki, for all the work you do for homeless people and for human rights and for rights to health care, working in Greenfield, and the standouts that you're involved with Code Pink. And I mean, you're just an amazing activist. Well, you're a role model for all of us.
That's why I invited you here to give me these accolades. But I think we were fortunate to be born when we were, and to live through the experiences we have, and to have the privilege we've had to get the educations we've gotten, and to find community. I think you're noting that is so important. That whether it's going back to the song where drops of water turn the mill, singly none. That we need one another. And so for those of you who are watching this, take heart. This is not simply an exercise to help you stay awake or perhaps to help you go to sleep, but rather to share stories of people who have gotten into good trouble and who continue to get into good trouble, because it's only through that good troubling that we trouble the waters and make the change that we need to have. And
make a better world. And use our feminist moral imagination to try to promote that feminist vision of a more egalitarian, free, world where we can really realize our potential as social animals that learn to work together and be able to have compassionate community together. Yeah.
So we just keep on keeping on, and we've got these few dates, but if you're watching this after October 5th, there are always in all communities things happening. And if nothing's happening in your community, make it happen. Organize it yourself. There's more room for good troublemakers than ever before. And we need everybody who can be a good troublemaker to do just that. Yes. And to keep our humor too. But I also want to just emphasize your noting how important singing is.
Yeah.
And how it really revitalizes us. Yeah. So is it last last ideas.
Well, for me, philosophy has given me a way to think about, what to value in life, and feminism has given me, and socialism that I connect to feminism has given me a way to know what those values are. And I'm grateful that I've been able to do that. And I hope other people, whether you agree with me or not, will think pretty deeply about, what it is that you're really living your life for and how important critical thinking is. Don't just be accepting what you were taught. You have the ability to think for yourself, to learn if they're not teaching you what you want to learn from others, to connect to other people, to develop an empathetic way of relating to the world. And I urge you to do it.
There you are. You see that good philosopher comes back to us and to remind us that, yes, that the importance of critical thinking, the importance of thinking, the importance of asking oneself, what am I doing here?
And what's the value of my life? And, what's the meaning of my life? And you can answer it because all of us have rational potential. All of us can learn to think. And to question what we've been taught, and to take what we've been taught that's good and say, well, this isn't being promoted, and to figure out how to make it better.
Yeah. So that's what we want to do. And I think we're going to say goodbye for now. I really can't tell you, Dr. Ann Ferguson.
Oh, stop calling me doctor.
I have appreciated your being here today to share these stories, because I think these are dire times, and I was inspired by what you had to say.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was inspired by being here.
Thank you.